You ready? I dearly hope you are. This is the time. And in many ways, I encourage you to presence and let go of your expectations. We're going to do an exercise to do that today. Expectations are the curse of existence in so many ways, because when you're expecting, you're measuring what happens in relation to that expectation. Expectations are a misuse of our power to dream. And dreaming needs to be loose. It needs to be specific, but open to transformation, open to rewriting from the world. And today, I invite you to do this because to be present in the world as she is transforming, there's a lot that needs to change. Welcome, wildflowers. This is the time. This is the work. The shift that's underway needs you. And it's calling you already in so many ways. To be present with how you're being called is to let go of how you expected to be called and to open yourself, open your awareness to a broad vision, a broad physical and spiritual awareness of what's happening. Finding it allows you to learn to recognize and discern where can you trust? What can you step on with your emotional and spiritual trust? And what can't you? I invite you to presence yourself. Consider what you've brought here today. Consider what you're feeling as a representation of what you've brought here. So if you close your eyes, which I invite you to do, just bring your awareness to your breath. This isn't a right or wrong. You just start to recognize how you're breathing. Watch how your awareness shifts your breath. So as you watch it, it's going to naturally take a little more space. Allow this, support it. Okay. From this, I ask you, are you ready? Now, many of you might not know how to answer that, and I encourage you to use your questions. But watch how your questions change your body. So stay present with how you're feeling and watch. When I ask you if you're ready, how are you going to know if you're ready, right? If you don't know what you're ready for, how can you answer that question? Today, we're going to do our best to help you. So here's the shift. Most of us, not all, but most of us are caught up in patterns of culture. I'm going to pause a little. I don't know these. I hope many of you aren't. If you know that you aren't, please pray for those of us who are. I am surrounded by patterns of culture in which there are multiple ways that people are essentially off-gassing their karma. What this means is people are bearing a certain range of energy, and their primary response to a lot of negative energy is to try to get rid of it. Now, this getting rid of has been channeled into various games. I encourage you to think of them as games. The reason it's valuable to think of them as games is because once you pay more attention, you can start to recognize the rules. And there are rules. What's happened is people have been channeled into these patterns in a way that allows us to distance ourselves from bad feelings. But in many, many cases, this is bound up within contexts where people are essentially fighting over who suffers. When you stare at it honestly, this is what's happening. People are fighting over who suffers. So the number one step you need to take is to say no to these. You say no. You say, I will not exist within a form that is dependent on dumping my karma on other people. Now, you don't have to understand what this means to make the prayer, but you do have to keep making the prayer until you understand what this means. Today, we're going to give you more of what it takes to appreciate and recognize how these patterns work. Because the more of your attention you get into watching these dynamics honestly, the more you will be repulsed by them. One of the most beautiful teachings is ancient. It's originally found in Leviticus, for my tradition, the roots, and Jesus emphasized it greatly. It's love thy neighbor as thyself. This is not a simple statement, but if you apply it to a lot of what's going on right now, you will notice immediately that a wide range of the dynamics that are currently accepted as normal are unacceptable by this standard. What it means is I choose to refuse to be happy when my neighbor is miserable. Wow, that's hard. Okay, let's pause that a little and let's wrestle with it. Am I supposed to never be happy even if this person over there is stuck? Well, maybe not. Let's try it in a slightly different way. I refuse to be happy at my neighbor's expense. Now this starts to get a little more painful and a little more painful. And I'm inviting you into territory where you're going to suffer a little more sometimes. So I want you to appreciate this is what we're doing. We're saying, I am not going to use a mechanism that allows me to take my pain and put it over there on someone else. Whew. If you understand just a little of how the world works, you need to take a deeper breath there, because it's likely that you have been doing this. Now, look, when you address this dynamic, I'm going to introduce you to yet another distinction, and this one really matters. Consensual and non-consensual. I am telling you right now, I have no patience, no room, no acceptance for non-consensual dynamics in this way. And what that means is, if I am in pain and I want to somehow channel this energy outwards at another, then it is my responsibility to sign up for circumstances in which that's understood. Join a sports team. Join a sports team. Play a board game. Now, in this dynamic, I am wishing for happiness, for joy, for victory. And I'm wishing it over someone else. Yet when I'm wishing it over someone else, they've signed up. They've agreed. So when we do this, we are functionally choosing to channel our negative energies in a conscious way. Now, it might be kind of brutal, might be kind of ugly. I don't particularly like it as leaving a bad taste in my mouth, because I don't really want to thrive, to feel glory when my neighbor is suffering. Yet, when I know that they've chosen to play this game with me, there's something fundamentally decent about it. We get to be in a position where we recognize what's happening. We're going through our lives, we're suffering, we don't know how to engage all our suffering, we don't know how to get closer to it, be present with it. And so we sign up to do this thing which relieves stress for everyone. Now, one person's left with the joy of victory, one person's left with the misery of defeat, but I would suggest that you become even more present with these dynamics, because the fundamental thing that's happened is you've digested stress, and both parties get that. It's a sacred rhythm. It's a sacred tool. It is not sacred when you simply fight in order to engage the same process. So if you go out into the world and you pick a fight with somebody because you're stressed, you choose to disparage, to hate, to resent particular things that you see in the world. Trans people make you upset. Someone with darker skin than you makes you upset. This is an active violation This is a non-consensual dynamic that's fundamentally opposed to the it's not just an encouragement, it's a commandment. Love thy neighbor. Now let's pause and see why this is working. What we are doing is learning to own everything that's our own. That is stunning. It's a stunning engagement. It's always been woven through the work we're doing here, and now more than ever, it's crucial. When you own everything that you are, you're saying, I no longer want to use these mechanisms, dynamics for trying to get rid of my karma. I don't want to. And when I say that assertively enough and repeatedly enough, the world starts to honor my new boundary, my new commitment, my new value, and she starts to teach you how. Now, in all honesty, this is one of the most daunting thresholds you can cross, particularly since for many, it's going to take a little while to understand and recognize why it matters so much. And yet, I hope, I believe that a lot of you do have an intrinsic sense. You feel this, you're drawn to it. In fact, many of you are probably hearing the call already within yourself and value it. It's the same call that drives people towards not eating animals. It's the same call that has people pulling away from games, competitive, aggressive sports. I encourage you to be present with the way in which this has always been a game. It's painful to recognize it, and yet beneath that initial sense of pain, the brutality of realizing where we are, what we're enmeshed within, how literally aggressive and even hateful the world is. Beneath recognizing these truths honestly rests the love of the world herself. Kaiya has given us these games to help us digest our karma. And when we have the opportunity to honestly assess our situations and consensually engage with conscious intent in dynamics that help us digest the karma, now we've taken our first step of responsibility. So you can't simply say, well, an enlightened being doesn't eat meat and doesn't play sports. An enlightened being doesn't take any pleasure in another's suffering. So I'm just going to try to emulate that. If you just try to copy the patterns of this transcendence, that doesn't necessarily take full responsibility for your own energy. And what can often happen is that in this striving for being a better person, for being a loving person, in this striving to love your neighbor, you're still in too much pain to make it work. See, I would guess that most of you listening to this, hundreds of you, err on taking the pain on yourself. Now, what this looks like is an in-between phase. And I'd encourage you to recognize it for this. It is an in-between phase. As we leave the karmic patterns, as we leave this game, a step you can take is to say, fine, give it to me. It's possible. In fact, it's likely. If you suffer from migraines, it's almost definitely true that this is what you're doing. If you're regularly unable to cope with the chaos in your mind, very likely this is what you're doing. If you are consistently overburdened by an inexplicable lethargy, it just doesn't make sense. It's like an energy that you're bearing is directly out of tune with your body and your instincts. Very clear clue that you are bearing many energies that are not your own. And when you have agreed to take on energies that are not your own, I know you as someone who is striving with all your heart to try to end this, to try to transcend it, to try to leave the hatred. You are refusing to do to others what is happening to you. And I honor you for it. And I'd like you to come deeper. To transcend these dynamics takes more than the willingness to bear the pain. Because if you simply bear other people's pain, two things are happening. One, they are not experiencing their own pain. This is not a gift. It does relieve them of the curse, the terror, the overwhelm. It does. And yet, if they don't have their own pain, they are losing their capacity to accept the message from their own spirit about what's going wrong in their life. If I put my hand in the fire and I use a trick to take away the pain of putting my hand in the fire, if I somehow am able to take that literal experience of pain and put it in you, my hand's still burning. This is seemingly ridiculous. How would that even be possible? It's possible all the time with spiritual dynamics. Your spirit is in pain when you are in circumstances that are bad for you. Your spirit is in pain when you enter an environment that is fundamentally opposed to something that's necessary for you. Your system is in pain when you are bossed around, when you are under the authority of someone who is not well, who can themselves take their excessive energy and make you accountable for it. Your system is hurting when that happens. If you find a way to get yourself out of that pain, you might continue to make the same choice. You might continue to put yourself in a situation, in a circumstance, in an environment, in a relationship in which you are regularly responsible for bearing other people's pain. Does this make the world a better place? Can, in the long term, in certain convoluted dynamics. Meaning, yes, if you bear someone else's dissonant karma for an extended period of time, maybe you can hold space for them to learn to transcend it. Good for you. There are not many people in my life who I would consider doing that for, but some of the most crucial, I would. But overall, the world is not a better place if you're suffering on a regular basis. You who are striving to transcend, you who are striving to love your neighbor as a fundamental part of who you are, do you think you're making the world a better place if you're just suffering on a normal days? You're out of it. We need you. We need you strong. We need you present. We need you capable. We need you inspired. We need you full of energy so you can help spread this love, transform situations that are in deep sickness, heal other people, be present with others who are learning to face their own feelings. The world needs you to thrive. My encouragement is that you stare honestly at yourself and ask, is this you? Because my guess is that this is the majority of the people who are here. In one or three different ways, you are regularly taking on dissonant energy because you simply don't want to fight back. You don't want to be the kind of aggression and hatefulness that would dump energy on another. Because the truth of karmic games is this. One person takes their dissonant energy, another person takes their dissonant energy. You make a pile of nasty energy. Then you fight over whose it is. So it's not really either person's. It's actually a combination of negative energy. But the karmic justice of this is typically two people who are willing to dump their energy get drawn together. There's some justice in that. If both of these individuals is willing to let someone else remain in suffering, bearing their pain, bearing their karmic dissonance, well then, at least whoever has to do that should be someone who would will that on another, all things remaining equal. And this is actually how it most commonly works. People are drawn together. But one person almost always learns to see the truth of this before the other. In any close karmic connection, I have found it to be rare that both oppositional karmic battlers learn to transcend at the same time. Typically, one person wakes up and realizes the horror they're in, realizes this is not acceptable to my soul. I don't want to be someone who hurts you in that way. I don't ever want to be someone who depends on dumping energy in such a way. And thus, you become the one who's bearing it for a while. Because this is, in a certain respect, a safer and more natural place for your soul. Our souls are most horrified by hatred. Our souls are most horrified by hatred. Our souls, in a certain fundamental natural reaction, would rather suffer than cause suffering. And the work of the world, the teaching of this place, is how to transcend both of these failings. Because you are not the greatest blessing to any of us if you are regularly suffering. If you are locked in an engagement where you bear the pain of several people and it's enough to keep you flattened or paranoid or just simply too hesitant to make a good decision, then this is a minimal gift. We've lost you at the expense of kind of neutralizing several icky people for a while. By bearing their pain, maybe they won't hurt other people as much. It's possible. This is a low standard, and I encourage you to think it's unacceptable. Now, a little deeper. No matter who in the world you are confronting, they do not deserve to bear your suffering. Within karmic games, there is a logic. It is a narrow logic, and it only works within the confines of the paradigm of the game. And in this logic, if someone else is suffering and you are suffering, you seem to have the right to evaluate, well, who's a worse person? Who's a worse person? We're going to identify the worst person and then dump our pain on them. And the insinuation is that somehow by receiving this brutality or punishment, they would theoretically want to change their ways. I found this rarely works. What normally happens is we just end up in somewhat moderately stable chains of resentment. And they trace all the way through this and this and this, all the way into the jails, where they trace to the person who takes on the worst. And there's some collective agreement in prison communities who's the worst. Now, usually it's a child molester. Yeah, I pretty much agree. The difference between a murderer and a child molester is a child molester may well have ruined someone's life for their entire lives, and they have to live with the suffering. So yeah, I think the assessment kind of works, but here's the problem. Is it really going to change someone to brutalize them? Now, on the standards of the creature, this can work sometimes. Meaning the creature within us can be intimidated into compliance. You know, there's an intrinsic ability to recognize and respond to dominance, to the creature inside us. It's ironic. Most of us are most afraid of the creature. And in a way, it makes sense if you see the viciousness within another person, that sort of like an angry wolf. I'm sure you have seen this at times. When you see this viciousness within another human, it's tempting to think that that's the worst side of them. But I would suggest to you it's not. We can intimidate that side of someone. That side of someone is not likely to be vicious if they think there is a more dominant being around who will retaliate. But it doesn't stop that instinct within them. It simply puts it in check, maybe. And the reason it's so important to appreciate this is if the threat is removed, that behavior would simply reemerge. So you have to start assessing your belief in reality. Do you have such a low standard that you think we can never heal these things? That you think we are permanently cursed to experience this same potential to be nasty, vicious beings? No. Simply not true. I will not spend much time with you if you think it is, because we can progress to talking about how to change it. And here is another lesson from an incredibly wonderful teacher, same one, in fact. Let he who is without sin cast the first stone. What does this mean? It means if you find someone who's done something awful and you think that throwing stones at them is righteous, I want to know if you have any sin in you. Have you done anything bad? Have you generated any negative karma that you're not addressing honestly? Most people do. But we live in a world that's kind of a mess of negative karmas. So in a very real way, people are depending on someone to be worse. I want you to be honest with yourself. How often do you or have you felt better about yourself by saying, well, I did this bad thing, but they did something worse? What if we were just to shine a little spirit light through the truth? We're going to just pierce into the truth of everyone and look very honestly at the ways in which you do this. Because here's the really kind of disturbing and amazing thing. The ways you have done this are still with you. They're still present. The ways you have done this generate energetic patterns. And those patterns are present in you. They can be seen and interpreted. And the only remedy to this illness, and it is an illness, the only remedy to this illness is to say, I want to be seen honestly. For over 20 years, I have known this lesson. When I first learned this lesson, I did much what I suggested some people do, because I did it, so I know. I stopped watching all sports. I stopped playing all games. I stopped eating all meat. I really wanted to be the goodness that I perceived. I really wanted to be someone who didn't dump my negative energy on anyone. And as a result, I started to learn because I set such a strong, clear intention and statement of who I wanted to be. So at first, my family, I love this. It's just a side note, but we used to play Monopoly. I began playing Monopoly by making deals with people to give me immunity. So I would spontaneously say, hey, I'll give you this card as long as I don't have to pay rent on your properties. And so I gave away all my properties, but I made immunity deals so that I didn't have to pay anybody. And so I was just gallivanting around the board. It pissed my family off so much they stopped playing with me. They didn't like changing the rules. It was interesting. It was interesting to watch. And then I just went still further and I stopped. I wanted to stop wishing that other people would lose. And you know what happened? That light just tore through me. I uncovered multiple traumas within my family. Some to me, some to others. Multiple deep traumas that had been hidden. When I refused to use the dynamics of off-gassing, trying to dump my karma, even consciously, even through these theoretically fun ways, I was dumping my negative energies. And when I refused to do it, I had to look at what was underneath. This is what's happening. The roots are stirring. There is light emerging from the center of the earth at higher frequencies and a broader range than ever before. It is lifting the hidden into our perception. It is lighting the shadow. There's nothing wrong with darkness. You were born in darkness. But scary, sick things often hide in the darkness because they think they will not be perceived. When the light is brought into spaces of darkness, we need to be at peace with illuminating everything that's there. And the only thing that dies is your illusions. The only thing that dies is your false belief that the way you're living has been okay. The only thing that dies is your contentment. But you're already not content because the ground is moving. There are too many problems going on right now to really, truly be content. And if you seek a past version of contentment while the ground is moving, you will fail. So to be present with how to change this is to totally dissolve your fear of being seen. And when you're willing to be seen, you have to uncover the subtle ways you've been contributing all along. I encourage you to recognize that most human beings in my culture are contributing to the worst patterns. Contributing. You want to know how? I take my pain. There's a trauma in my family. Now, be aware, we've worked to heal ours. But let's imagine it's before I've worked to heal my traumas. I take the trauma energy, because when you have a trauma, you don't have to be conscious of it, but it's generating dissonant energy. So I'm regularly getting this little pile of anxiety that accumulates and bursts into my awareness. What do I do with it? Well, I look around and I compete with somebody. There are lots of ways to do this. I could rely on an idea that I'm smarter than other people. If I rely on an idea that I'm smarter than other people, I see someone do something I call stupid, and I push my negative energy at them. It's a wrestling match on the spirit planes. And everyone's seeking to try to stay vain, trying to perpetuate a positive understanding of yourself in relation to other people. So people are competing, but it's not consensual. So it's all these disagreements about what matters, what's most important. Someone's hired to fix the plumbing in your house, and they come in and they find you've done something stupid, and they're like sitting there going, "Thanks for the money." God, this guy's a fucking idiot. So he's dumping a little of his negative energy. And then the person paying them is like, pathetic. He should have gone to school. He's going to have to do this all his life. Everybody's fighting over who's who. But not everybody. You have to be willing to wake up to see how awful it is that these perpetual little built-in games, deeply disrespectful, hateful, imbalanced, constantly trying to identify flaws, correctly identifying flaws. Somebody made a mistake, pile on, dump your negative energy. You have to be willing to stop in every way that you are invested in such patterns. You must stop. And once you do these, it hurts. You don't have a way to get rid of your anxiety. So every time your anxieties come up, you have to let them take you deeper. You don't have a way to get rid of your depression. So every time you feel depressed, you have to allow it to draw you down with the willingness to learn what you might be hiding from. None of these things are random. None of these things are broken. None of these things are punishment. They are stimuli that are designed to help you tune into your spirit. And your spirit is trying to teach you to recognize what you are bearing and how you can change it. But if your primary mechanism is to refuse to acknowledge the truth of what you are, well then, you're going to be lost in these karmic games. And here's the invitation. Beneath the anxiety, beneath the depression, beneath the lack, beneath the insecurity, beneath the trauma, beneath the resentment and the hatred and the sorrow, you are a divine soul. And to remember this fully enough to embody it, is to realize in the same moment you are calling your soul to be here, present within you. And this is actually new. It is a remembrance, but it is also a totally transformational, pioneering, courageous step. You are calling your soul into this place, into this way, into this body, into this world. You are igniting a life, a form of spiritual vibrancy and presence that becomes a gift. Your soul will immediately get to work teaching you how to own all your feelings because you want to own your feelings. There is no advantage in dumping your anxieties because your anxieties are teaching you how to pray and what to pray for. When you trust this, you begin to integrate your prayers. And as you make these prayers and they become real, you increasingly lose all interest in dumping your loose energies on another. When you learn to recognize and accept and even trust that depression is telling you to rest, it is not a vague word, deep rest. But if you are living in a context where you cannot get this rest, it seems hopeless on a level that is suicidal. And so you shift to make an absolute priority of creating the circumstances in your life where depression becomes a signal to generate a lifestyle where you can get deep rest. And a stunning, an astonishing, magical truth emerges. You don't have to fix everything right away. You have to learn to honor the stimuli. When you honor your depression and you recognize it as a call that you need deep rest under healthy circumstances where you feel safe and nurtured, when you honor this and you honestly assess what you actually need and you take the steps in this direction, the edge of the dramatic pain will ease. As long as you are investing in the road towards health, your system will calm down because the depression and the anxiety and the mania have always been signals that are designed to try to guide you in the right direction. When you honor them, they will ease. They will not leave because they're going to keep pushing, but they will ease enough to give you the sparks of satisfaction that keep you going, moving in the right ways. This is the path. You have to choose to be vulnerable on a level that allows these terrible feelings. It's not someone else who's suffering. It's you. It's not someone, well, I'm feeling kind of bad, but they're worse. No. You stop using that mechanism to relieve your pain altogether. You stop using it, and it becomes you and just a stark, naked exposure to divine eyes.